Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Saturday, February 22nd, 2025 in the space and time continuum. Tried to get updated on anything that might be happening today. I saw some clips of Trump speaking at CPAC. He's just being an idiot as usual. We don't need to even talk about what he's talking about. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an idiot. And by the way, CPAC, is it weekly now? Usually they have things like that once a year, don't they? What is it? The Conservative Political Action Committee. It's not conservative anymore. It's just MAGAT. And they seem to have it every week. I think it's always in Florida, too. Makes it easy for Trump. Speaking of maybe his trip to Daytona 500, that's in Florida as well. But not walking distance or driving distance for his motorcade. So they got to put his motorcade on huge military airplanes that hold a bunch of cars. Those huge, you see them in movies where the bottom comes out, opens up and they drive cars up into these huge airplanes. They have to fly that down there. They have to fly Air Force One down there just for him to do a BS propaganda, North Korea-like show of him. Here's my cool car I get to drive in. Here's my cool airplane. Excuse me, I had a little bit of a cold. I can't do his voice without having a little bit of a cough there. Sorry, but how much did that cost? People are saying millions. I've seen 5 million. I also saw people talking about when he went to the Super Bowl, which again, the same thing has to happen. They have to fly to an airport and then he gets in a motorcade. That motorcade has to be flown from Washington, D.C. in these big freighter aircraft. I saw people saying that cost $20 million. I don't know, but I'm sure it costs millions of dollars. Rolling Stone magazine reports. Kristi Noem says the $2 million DHS ad campaign thanking Trump was his idea. Trump's Homeland Security Secretary said he instructed her to make ads that thank me for closing the border. So Kristi Noem's not denying it. She's saying, hey, it wasn't my fault. So, Doge, are you finding all of the wasteful spending? What event is Trump going to go to next weekend to try and distract us from the BS he's doing? People this week are scared because there was the Friday night massacre at the Pentagon because they fired one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who's a black guy. I guess just because he's a black guy. They fired some other people as well. Yeah, that sucks. But so far, nothing is taking. Pete Hegseth might have ordered this done. Is it going to happen? Other things they do don't happen because they're idiots. Talking about that the United States is just now like 1930s Germany, except Hitler wasn't an idiot. I mean, I hear people referring back to the George W. Bush times and the Ronald Reagan times. We were scared to death during both of those times, too. George W. Bush lied us into a war and brought the rest of the world along with, based on lies. Now, that was Dick Cheney mostly. Dick Cheney's not an idiot. Some people speculate Dick Cheney might help us get rid of Trump. I don't know. But the fact that Dick Cheney thinks Trump is horrible. Now, Dick Cheney knows Trump's an idiot. Again, the 300 employees that were overseeing our nuclear weapons, and then they Next day had to, oops, we have to rehire you. Okay, they're idiots. Nothing is working. And this week, a lot of people are switching from fear to anger. You may or may not have heard of what's been going on at these town halls with Republicans. It's explosive. I'm going to play you something from, I call it the crash at Roswell, because it takes place in Roswell, Georgia. And people crashed. They didn't crash it. They came to this town hall that was scheduled by Representative Rich McCormick, who won this very red district by 20 points, as did Donald Trump. And here are his constituents at his town hall.
Tyranny is rising in the White House, and a man has declared himself our king. So I would like to know, rather, the people would like to know, what you, Congressman, and your fellow congressmen are going to do to rein in the megalomaniac in the White House.
Listen to those cheers. People are standing up. This is how they respond to his
When you talk about tyranny, when you talk about presidential power, I remember having the same discussion with Republicans when Biden was elected. Who are yelling just as loud as you.
Now, I actually edited that down a little bit because it went so long. Their cheering went so long. He had to wait such a long time before he could even answer the question. And then when he tried to answer, they booed him down. Now, this is in a district that he and Trump won by 20 points. He got 60% of the vote. Is 60% of this district Republicans? Were 60% of the people there Republicans? Or was that the 40% rising up? Here is another. Now, this is in Wisconsin, Representative Fitzgerald. And if you're not watching this on video on YouTube, you got to see this guy's face when the crowd reacts negatively to what he's got to say here. I'll play you the clip and explain it after.
When will you stand up to them and say that is enough?
The end result of the fraud and abuse that has been discovered already.
Yeah, he was completely stifled before he could even finish one sentence of his answer, and the look on his face was just astonishment. There's a clip of Stephen Miller, if you know who he is, who he's surprised at a host on CNN because she's not celebrating. Why are you not celebrating these cuts? Why are you not celebrating? He went nuts. Why are you not on our side? You know, that's these Republican elected officials. Stephen Miller's not elected, but he's, I guess, an official in the White House. They assume that all Americans think that Donald Trump is like Superman and Elon Musk is the smartest hero, a Tony Stark, I guess people say, you know, and he's coming in and he's going to save us because he's so smart and he knows how to work the computers. He knows how to work those voting counting computers. Trump repeated many times and still says it sometimes. Okay, that's another subject, but it's remarkable how all of these Republicans look like they assume that Americans are on their side. Americans are revolting. I'm going to play you another clip here. This is a Democrat, actually, Paul Tonko. His constituents came and thanked him for being at an event, basically kind of a protest. Now, listen to what this guy. He looks to be a white guy, probably in his 50s, early 50s maybe. Regular guy. He's got a T-shirt with a flannel shirt unbuttoned over top of it. Just a regular guy. And here's what he says.
I think it has. If you ask us to show up, Congressman Tonko, we will show up. In D.C. But it cannot be. We have to take the gloves off. We can't wait for protocol. They're not playing by the rules. We have to take it to them. When I saw you at those places, and I saw you next to Maxine Waters, yet I was so proud that my representative was on the front line, right there. But I thought about Jimmy Carter, and I thought about John Lewis. And I know what John Lewis would have done. He would have gotten arrested that day. Make them outlaw you. We will stand behind you. We will be there with you. I will get arrested with you. I will do it.
They go on cheering for quite a while. He said, I will get arrested with you. And everybody gives him a standing ovation, as though they also would stand behind their representative and get arrested with him in protest against the Trump administration and Elon Musk administration. Do you see what's happening here? Another example I was very surprised at hearing in the car, Stephanie Miller. The Stephanie Miller Show is probably as one of the top two, at least, if not the number one liberal talk show on radio, on broadcast radio. We get her show here in the Twin Cities on AM 950, the Progressive Talk of Minnesota. It's an AM radio station, old school. Stephanie Miller has been doing this for a long time. I've been listening to her for more than 20 years. She's great because she used to be a comedian as well, but she's always been into politics because her father actually ran as a Republican on the ticket with Goldwater back in 1964. Stephanie Miller's dad was the vice presidential guy on that ticket. They lost, of course, but Stephanie Miller kind of inevitably has been interested in politics, but she is also a comedian, wanted to be an actress. I think she did a little bit of that, but she's funny. She is really funny, not like Republican people on radio who think they're funny. Stephanie Miller is truly funny, and she's got funny people around her, so it's a pleasure to listen to her show because it's funny as well. But she brings it, and she brings more news than any CNN show is going to bring you. And she's on for 3 hours every week morning. She began this week talking, and then repeatedly talking about that the election needs to be investigated. How many bomb threats? I think 60 or 70 bomb threats in, of course, Democratic-leaning places where people had to leave the votes unattended for a while, so therefore they had to throw a lot of votes out. You've heard me talk about the Greg Palast thing about throwing all these votes out. But Stephanie Miller is also talking about Elon Musk and Starlink. By the way, there's a story out right now in Reuters, not CNN. U.S. negotiators pressing Kyiv for access to Ukraine's critical minerals have raised the possibility of cutting the country's access to Elon Musk's vital Starlink satellite internet systems. So the U.S., Elon Musk and Donald Trump are threatening shutting off, because Elon Musk, I can just do it in my phone, shutting off Starlink so that Ukraine loses their internet unless they sign this extortion that Donald Trump's trying to do to Ukraine. All right, it's time for us to take a break, but people are getting pissed, and people are standing up against this BS. And people are starting to talk about that Donald Trump did not win this election. I'll come back with a little bit more about what Stephanie Miller said on her extremely popular, listened to by millions show this week on the radio when we come back on A Satellite View. And again, if you like the music you hear here, go to toddmikkelson.com and press the music link. You'll find this music and a lot of other music I've written throughout the years. And go to my Instagram and follow me at Todd Mikkelson on Instagram. And we also have a YouTube show that for the first time we put up the whole show last week in its entirety on video on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and you search for A Satellite View Podcast, you'll find it. Now, talking about what Stephanie Miller was saying, she has this guy Malcolm Vance on at least weekly. He used to be in intelligence. He was a spy, actually. I went this summer to Washington, D.C., and Heidi and I went through the International Spy Museum. Man, that is a cool thing to do. Very recommended. Allot yourself a lot of time. A lot of time for yourself. But Malcolm Nance, he's in some videos and stuff talking about disguises that he did. You know, he was a spy in the Middle East mostly. He's gone to Ukraine. He actually put a uniform on and went to Ukraine and helped them out a couple times during this war. A lot of the reason people are turning against Trump this week is because of what he's saying about Zelensky and Ukraine. Anyway, back to Stephanie Miller and Malcolm Nance being on her show. And she said, do you think that Donald Trump cheated? Do you think Kamala Harris actually won this election? And he goes, yeah, that's extremely possible. Now, I haven't heard people talk about that. They talk about it being rigged by Starlink changing votes in voting machines and the bomb threats. And of course, then you add that to the Greg Palast thing about throwing out 4,776,000 votes wrongly. There are many angles, or not many, but at least two major angles, maybe three major angles to 4 to 5 major angles about how the Republicans cheated this time. They cheated way more than they have before, which makes it much more obvious and visual. And Elon Musk has been doing this in other countries. Tomorrow, the 23rd of February, is the German election. And they're talking about, they've already complained that Elon Musk has been trying to meddle in their election. I don't know if something might happen explosive in this regard. But the fact that Stephanie Miller has been talking about it, and Jasmine Crockett putting in just little tidbits. Last week you heard her say the guy who was allegedly elected as president. She's very careful with her words. Here's other talk. See if you can guess where this is coming from and who this is.
Putin could end this war in right this minute by just stopping. That's the thing. Ukraine is defending, Putin's attacking, and he could stop. And so that's what we should be pushing for.
Yeah, it's a great point that you make. And you know, it certainly felt in those comments from President Trump that he was more critical of Zelensky, certainly noting his lack of popularity with that 4% number in terms of the potential for elections.
That number comes out of thin air. There's no 4% number. Zelensky's got a 52% approval rating, not a 4% approval rating. They're under attack. The reason they have martial law is because this country's been invaded. They have airstrikes every day from Russia. I think it's highly unfair for him to be critical of the victim. He should be critical of the person who's launching the airstrikes.
And certainly when you think about, approval for Vladimir Putin, I mean, what are you going to say when you get the phone call? What do you think of Vladimir Putin? You better say you love him. So I don't believe anything on the Russia side either in terms of approval of Vladimir Putin.
She doesn't believe anything on the Russian side either. Does that mean in addition to what Donald Trump said? That's Maria Bartiromo on Fox News. She's a huge Trump cheerleader. The guy you hear is Bill Browder. This is on their business channel. And this discussion happened on Fox News this week. They're not going with Trump on the Ukraine thing. They are not going with Trump on the Ukraine thing. The reason she talked about 4% approval rating is because that's what Donald Trump said Zelensky has in Ukraine. 4%. You heard Bill Browder say 52% is what he actually has. I've heard elsewhere that Zelensky is at a 57% approval rating in Ukraine. If you haven't heard the news, Donald Trump called Zelensky an unelected dictator. Complete lie. Complete lie. And then he goes on trying to spread the same thing Vladimir Putin says, saying that Ukraine needs to have an election right now. They're not due for an election right now. Yeah. Trump has fully taken the side of Russia, and Fox is not going along with him. I was going to read here, but I think it takes too long. Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, wrote something after Trump said all that. Now, our guy, Kellogg, General Kellogg, I can't remember his first name, but he's the guy that Trump made as the, sort of like the ambassador to Ukraine. And they did have a meeting. He went to Ukraine and had a meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. And Zelensky reported on it. He put video out about it. They were supposed to have a press conference. Trump called it off at the last second, said, "You're not going to do that." Why? Zelensky just bypassed Trump. He basically ignored Trump, put out video of him meeting with Kellogg and talked about in another post about how the talks with Kellogg were productive. He's just ignoring Donald Trump. He's bypassing Donald Trump, as are a lot of people. Here's what a member of parliament in Canada, Charlie Angus, has to say.
I think we've witnessed the most extraordinary week in European politics since the fall of the Berlin Wall. But that was a good story. What we've seen over the last week, beginning with the disaster in Munich with J.D. Vance, total attack on European democracy, and then followed up here at our NATO meetings with all of America's key allies, that they flushed 75 years of diplomacy, hard work, commitment to the rule of law and international diplomacy. They just flushed it down the toilet while Trump and Vance and the MAGA morons here took the time to kneel down and kiss the feet of Vladimir Putin. Things will not go back to what they were. And Europe now is very much cast adrift from the United States, and certainly Canada is looking to where our place in the world is, and we're looking more to Europe now than to our closest neighbor.
That's a pretty remarkable statement. I mean, Europe and the United States are currently, apparently, not really allies. How are they seeing this? Now, I think, again, they're realizing that they're not allies with Donald Trump and the Trump administration. And they're waiting for the United States to get back on track. When will that happen? I want to play you a little bit more of what MP Charlie Angus from Canada has to say.
Has kissed up to the gangster Putin from the get-go. When we saw the horrific violence unleashed against the Ukrainian people, Donald Trump thought this was the sign of a savvy genius. To attack a leader like Zelensky, who has more moral fiber in his little toe than Donald Trump has in his entire body and his entire cabinet, is outrageous. Vladimir Zelensky has shown the world what democracy means. Donald Trump is a convicted felon and a sexual pervert. Those two men shouldn't even be mentioned in the same sentence. But this is what I would leave you with, because it was said to me by one of my Eastern European colleagues who came up after they had heard that Donald Trump is now calling for regime change in Ukraine. And she said to me, the Ukrainian people survived the Holodomor. The Ukrainian people survived Stalin. The Ukrainian people survived Chernobyl. They've survived Putin. Do you think that Donald Trump is going to break the Ukrainian people? So Donald, just put a sock in it for now. You need to understand that the damage that you're doing to help your criminal buddy, Vladimir Putin, will pay in the long term enormous damage to democracy, to your allies, and to the world. And the world will be forced now to treat America the way we treat Putin. And we are going to all have to pick up our game dramatically to defend democracy, whether it's in Ukraine or whether it's in our own countries.
Do you realize how big of a deal what he just said is? Europe has to treat America like Putin. You know, and you have Donald Trump saying we're going to put tariffs on everybody. Of course, he's an idiot. He's an idiot. People are on our side. Everybody knows that Donald Trump's an idiot, and they are standing up to him. Now, you notice, if you're watching the video, you notice that clip is from the Midas Touch Network. And I purposefully, if you are watching this on YouTube, I kept all of their stuff up there because I want you to go find them. Okay, the Midas Touch Network on YouTube. They had more downloads and views this week than Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has been number one on podcasts forever. This week, Midas Touch beat Joe Rogan. Let's see if that keeps going on. Midas Touch has been growing so much since Election Day because they bring real news and they report things how they really are. They don't try and scare you. They bring you what the people are really saying. That clip of Charlie Angus was actually him talking directly to Ben Meiselas from Midas Touch Network. He was a guest on the Midas Touch Network. They have major people on all. He interviewed Joe Biden at least twice in the last year. Ben Meiselas went into the White House and interviewed Joe Biden, an exclusive interview on the Midas Touch Network. Go find them. We need to support places like them. Okay? Enough with the CNN BS. Anyway, another thing that happened, governors standing up to Donald Trump. He so smugly confronted the governor of Maine. Her name is Janet Mills. I was going to play you the clip, but it's just so disgusting, which is kind of why I maybe should play you the clip. But Donald Trump just being such a dick, saying, where is she? Is she here? And then in a room full of governors in the White House at some luncheon, in front of all these other people, are you going to comply to this LGBTQ BS, whatever? I don't know what he was talking about. She said, we will stick to the law, the state law and the federal law. And then he goes, we are the federal law, meaning him. And she said, I will stick to the actual federal law and state law. And he goes, if you don't comply, we're going to not give you any federal funding. And she just goes, I'll see you in court. Right there in front of everybody. Who had the balls there? She had the balls. She stood up right in front of everybody. These Republicans who are having these town halls, they're not standing up to anybody. And they're getting slapped down hard. How long can they do this? How long can they sustain that? You know? The talk is turning. People are switching from fear to anger. It's the next step that we inevitably need to take. We are all in this together. People now are starting to talk on big shows about the fact that Donald Trump did not win this election. Kamala Harris won this election. She is still here with us. All of these people are on our side. For every one MAGAT, there's at least 5,000 of us. The protests on Monday, there was protests in all 50 states and around the world. Hundreds and sometimes thousands of people showing up at these individual protests. Many, many, many protests. It happened in Minnesota, even though we had one of the coldest weeks, well, definitely the coldest week of the winter. I think on Monday, it was one of those days where it stayed 13 below zero all day long. And we still had hundreds of people at a protest at the state capitol in Minnesota. Okay, that's you and me. We're in this together. Any little thing any one of us can do. I'm trying to make sure that we stay together and stay sane. And I thank you for joining me in doing that. I'm with you, and I know you're with me, and all these other people. These really great people who are in elected office, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Jamie Raskin, Chris Murphy, they're all here with us, fighting with us. Mark Elias, you've heard me talk on the show about him. He's a lawyer, and he's hitting it hard with many, many lawsuits, and I don't think he's losing any of them. The Supreme Court stood up. Okay, I've gone overtime here, but I have to read. Now, this is somebody else that you should go find. The Dworkin Report, okay? Scott Dworkin, Dworkin. And he puts out something on a Substack. Once a week, he writes this. Yesterday, the Supreme Court paused Trump's attempt to fire Hampton Dillinger, head of the agency in charge of whistleblower protection. I didn't even know this. It's hard to find this news. The Supreme Court, yes, the Supreme Court, stood up against Trump. This is the first legal dispute to reach the high court over Trump's unconstitutional maneuvering, and it certainly won't be the last. Also on Friday, a judge blocked Trump's attempt to end government support for DEI programs. The injunction prohibits terminating or altering federal contracts related to DEI. Despite all-out pressure from the DOJ and Trump declaring himself king over the matter, a federal judge refused to dismiss the Eric Adams corruption case in New York. A judge also blocked DOJ from accessing Treasury payment systems after winning the court order. The New York Attorney General Letitia James promised, "We will keep fighting to protect all Americans from this administration's destruction." That's a strong person who's with us against the Trump administration. She's in the American judicial system. Bernie Sanders started a coast-to-coast having rallies, and he's been having great turnout. Bernie Sanders, traveling, he did a bunch of them already just over the weekend and over the last couple days. The Associated Press filed a lawsuit against Trump Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, Deputy Chief of Staff Taylor Budowich, and Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt for banning its journalists from presidential events. Quote, "The press and all people in the United States have the right to choose their own words and not be retaliated against by the government," unquote. That's what the AP said. They're on our side. Scott Dworkin writes, "Most of this good news gets buried under the mountain of Trump and Musk's garbage." Okay? So we got to dig for this. I'm digging for it. I'm sending it out to you. All of this information. Okay, we're going to remain strong against this idiot bully twerp. What does AOC say?
I'm not going to give them my fear.
Don't give them your fear. They want you to be scared. Don't give it to them. These people are twerps and they're idiots, and none of what they're doing is working out right. Part of the reason the DEI thing was able to get knocked down so easily was because the judge said, wow, this is really poorly written. I don't even know what you're trying to say here. They don't even know how to do what they're trying to do. And we don't know what's going to happen in the coming weeks and months. What more will come out about what happened during this election? not trying to get hopes up or anything like that. That all of is unprecedented, but they did cheat way too much. They've been cheating for decades. But this time it was like, what happened here? We all felt it. That night, we all felt it. Something's not right here. Anyway, again, not trying to get your hopes up, but we will stand firm, and the harder we fight against it, and the more we put our thoughts and energy toward knocking down this regime, the closer we will come to being successful. So thank you so much for staying with me here long again on a satellite view. I'll speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.
Someday soon we'll be on the same.